The summer sun was setting over the colony of New Montana when everything changed forever. The sky turned from orange to purple, and the twin moons were just starting to show their pale faces above the distant mountains. Lily Carter sat on the grass near the agricultural domes, watching the automated harvesters move slowly through the wheat fields. She was 11 years old, with brown hair that her mother always said needed brushing, and green eyes that her father said could see right through a person's lies. Lily loved this time of day. The colony was quiet. The adults were finishing their work shifts, and the other children were heading home for dinner. But Lily liked to sit alone sometimes, just watching the sky change colors and thinking about things. She thought about Earth, a planet she had never seen but heard so many stories about. She thought about her father, who was probably still in the engineering bay fixing some broken machine. She thought about her mother, who would be calling her name soon, telling her to come inside and wash her hands. New Montana was not a big colony. Only about 2,000 people lived there, spread across a dozen habitat domes connected by covered walkways. The planet itself was called 442b, but nobody called it that. The first settlers had come from Montana back on Earth, and they had named their new home after the place they missed most. That was 20 years ago, before Lily was born. Now New Montana was her home, the only home she had ever known. The wheat fields stretched out for kilometers in every direction, protected by invisible energy shields that kept out the harsh radiation from the planet's sun. Beyond the fields were the mountains, purple and jagged against the darkening sky. And beyond the mountains was wilderness that no human had ever explored. Lily sometimes dreamed about being an explorer, about hiking into those mountains and discovering new things. But her mother always said she was too young for such adventures. Maybe when she was older, maybe when she was 16. Lily pulled a blade of grass from the ground and twirled it between her fingers. She was thinking about her homework, a report about the history of human space exploration that was due tomorrow. She had not started it yet. She knew she should go home and work on it, but the evening was too beautiful to waste sitting in front of a computer screen. That was when she heard the sound. It started as a low hum, like the buzzing of 1,000 bees far away. Lily looked up at the sky, trying to find the source. At first she saw nothing. Then she noticed a dark shape moving against the purple clouds. It was too big to be a shuttle, too fast to be one of the cargo ships that came from Earth every few months. As she watched, the shape grew larger and larger, descending toward the colony at impossible speed. Lily stood up, her heart starting to beat faster. Something was wrong. She could feel it in her bones, that instinct her father called the gut feeling. The gut feeling was never wrong, he always said. When your gut tells you something is bad, you listen. The dark shape resolved into a ship, but not any ship Lily had ever seen before. It was black and angular, with sharp edges that seemed to cut the air itself. Strange lights pulsed along its hull, red and orange like the eyes of some predatory animal, and it was huge, easily 3 times the size of the colony's largest building. Alarms started blaring across the colony. Red lights flashed on the habitat domes. Voices crackled over the public announcement system, telling everyone to get inside, to seek shelter, to remain calm. But Lily could hear the fear in those voices. The adults were scared. And if the adults were scared, then something was very, very wrong. Lily started running toward her home, her legs pumping as fast as they could carry her. Other colonists were running too, parents grabbing children, workers abandoning their posts, everyone moving in a panic toward the habitat domes. The alien ship hovered above the colony now, blocking out the last light of the setting sun. Its shadow fell over everything like a dark blanket. Then the ship opened fire. Beams of green light shot down from the vessel, striking the ground around the colonists. But they were not killing shots. Lily realized with horror that the aliens were hurting them, driving them toward the center of the colony like cattle being driven into a pen. Anyone who tried to run in a different direction was cut off by another beam of light. The message was clear: go where we want you to go or die. Lily changed direction, trying to reach her home dome. Her parents would be there. Her father would know what to do. He always knew what to do. But a beam of green light struck the ground right in front of her, so close that she could feel the heat on her face. She stumbled backward, falling hard on her back. For a moment she just lay there, staring up at the alien ship above her. It was so big, so impossibly big. How could anyone fight something like that? How could anyone survive? Then she heard her mother's voice. "Lily, Lily, where are you?" Lily scrambled to her feet and saw her mother running toward her through the chaos. Susan Carter was a tall woman with the same brown hair as her daughter, though hers was always neatly tied back. She was still wearing her work uniform from the medical center, white and clean and now stained with dirt from her desperate run. "Mom," Lily shouted, running toward her. They met in the middle of the field, Susan grabbing her daughter and pulling her into a tight embrace. For a moment, just a moment, Lily felt safe. Her mother was here. Everything would be okay. "We have to move," Susan said, her voice tight with fear. "We have to get to the shelter." But it was too late. The alien ship landed with a sound like thunder, crushing the wheat fields beneath its massive bulk. Doors opened along its sides and figures began pouring out. They were not human. They were tall and thin, with 4 arms and 4 eyes, their skin a deep purple that almost looked black in the fading light. They wore armor that seemed to be made of some kind of chitinous material, and they carried weapons that glowed with the same green light as the ship's guns. Lily had never seen an alien before. She had learned about them in school, of course. Humanity had made contact with several species since expanding into the galaxy, some friendly and some not. But she had never seen one in person. Now she was seeing hundreds of them, and they did not look friendly at all. The aliens moved with terrifying efficiency, surrounding the colonists and forcing them into a tight group in the center of the settlement. Anyone who resisted was struck down with electric prods that left them twitching on the ground. The colonists who had weapons tried to fight back, but their simple plasma pistols were no match for the alien technology. One by one, the defenders fell. Lily watched as Danny, the young teacher who ran the colony school, tried to organize a group of men to protect the children. He was only 25 years old, with blonde hair and a kind face that always made the kids feel safe. Now that face was hard with determination as he stood between the aliens and his students. "Stay behind me," Danny shouted to the children. "Don't let them separate us." But the aliens did not care about his bravery. 3 of them grabbed Danny and threw him to the ground, beating him with their prods until he stopped struggling. The children screamed and cried, but there was nothing they could do. There was nothing anyone could do. Lily felt her mother's arms tighten around her. "Stay quiet," Susan whispered. "Don't draw attention to yourself. Whatever happens, stay quiet." But attention was already being drawn to them. One of the aliens walked through the crowd of captives, its 4 eyes scanning the terrified humans. This one was different from the others. Its armor was more elaborate, decorated with strange symbols that seemed to glow with inner light. When it spoke, its voice was high and clicking, like the sound of insects chirping. "I am commander of the Dominion," the alien said. Somehow, Lily could understand its words, though she did not know how. Perhaps there was some kind of translation technology at work. "You are now property of the Dominion. Resistance is futile and will be punished with death." The colonists murmured among themselves, fear and anger mixing in equal measure. Lily saw her father in the crowd, Bill Carter, his face bruised and his hands bound behind his back. He was a big man, strong from years of physical work, but even he had been unable to fight off the alien invaders. His eyes found Lily across the crowd, and she saw the fear in them. Not fear for himself, fear for her. Commander walked slowly through the captives, studying them like a farmer studying livestock. His mandibles clicked with amusement as he passed by the frightened humans. "Such soft creatures," he said. "Such fragile things. I have heard stories of Terrans, but I never believed them. They said your species was stubborn, defiant, that you would fight to the last breath." he laughed, a horrible sound like grinding metal. "But look at you now, cowering, trembling. You are no different from any other prey." The commander stopped in front of a man who was still standing tall, refusing to bow his head. It was George Palmer, the colony's mayor. He was an older man, gray-haired and distinguished, with a voice that could calm any argument and a mind that could solve any problem. But now his voice trembled slightly as he spoke. "What do you want from us?" George asked. "We have done nothing to your people. We are peaceful colonists. We have no weapons, no military value. Why attack us?" Tilted his head, studying the mayor with curiosity. "You misunderstand, Terran. We do not attack you because you are a threat. We attack you because you are valuable. Your species has something that many in the galaxy desire. You have fear. You have pain. You have suffering. And there are those who feed on such things." "Feed on?" George's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "You will learn soon enough." Turned away from the mayor and continued his walk through the crowd. His 4 eyes scanned the captives, searching for something. Lily did not know what he was looking for, but she had a terrible feeling that she was about to find out. The commander stopped in front of a young woman who was holding a crying baby. He reached out with one clawed hand and touched the baby's cheek, ignoring the mother's screams of protest. "Youth," said, "innocence. These are valuable commodities." He moved on, leaving the terrified mother clutching her child. He stopped in front of an old man who was bleeding from a wound on his head. "Pain," the commander observed. "Suffering, also valuable." He moved on again, and this time his path brought him directly toward Lily and her mother. Susan Carter pushed Lily behind her, shielding her daughter with her own body. "Stay away from her," she said, her voice firm despite her fear. "She's just a child." His mandibles clicked with interest. "A child? How old?" 11, Susan said. "She's only 11 years old, please. Whatever you want, take it from us. Take it from the adults. Leave the children alone." The commander leaned closer, his 4 eyes studying Lily with unsettling intensity. 11 years old, he repeated. "Young, very young. And what is that I smell?" He sniffed the air, his nostrils flaring. "Blood. She is wounded." Lily looked down at her leg and realized for the first time that she was hurt. During the chaos, when she had fallen, something had cut her thigh. Blood was soaking through her pants, dark and wet. She had been so scared that she had not even noticed the pain. "It's nothing," Susan said quickly. "Just a scratch, it's nothing." But was not listening. He reached past Susan and grabbed Lily by the arm, pulling her forward despite her mother's desperate attempts to hold on. "No," Susan screamed. "No, please, take me instead, please." 2 soldiers grabbed Susan and dragged her away, throwing her to the ground. Bill Carter tried to fight his way toward his wife and daughter, but more soldiers blocked his path, beating him with their prods until he collapsed. Lily struggled against the commander's grip, but his clawed fingers were like iron around her arm. She kicked and punched, but her blows had no effect on his armored body. He simply held her up, studying her like a scientist studying a specimen. "This one," announced to his soldiers, "this one will serve a greater purpose." "What are you going to do to her?" Danny shouted from where he lay on the ground. "She's just a kid. What kind of monsters are you?" Turned to look at the young teacher, his expression unreadable. "We are not monsters, Terran. We are survivors. And in this galaxy, survival requires sacrifice. Your child will be a sacrifice that ensures our people's safety for another cycle." "Sacrifice?" Danny struggled to sit up, his face pale with horror. "What does that mean? Where are you taking her?" The commander did not answer. He simply turned and walked toward his ship, dragging Lily along behind him. She twisted and fought, but it was useless. She was 11 years old and wounded. He was an alien warrior in full armor. There was nothing she could do. "Mom," Lily screamed. "Dad, help me." She could hear her parents' voices behind her, screaming her name, begging the aliens to let her go. But the voices grew fainter and fainter as she was dragged up the ramp and into the dark interior of the alien vessel. The last thing she saw before the doors closed was her mother's face, twisted with grief, tears streaming down her cheeks. Then there was only darkness. The inside of the ship was nothing like the human vessels Lily had seen in pictures. There were no seats, no control panels, no windows, just long corridors of dark metal that seemed to absorb the dim red light that came from somewhere above. The air smelled strange, like burnt metal and something organic, something alive. Lily's leg was throbbing now, the pain finally breaking through her shock and fear. She stumbled as she walked but did not slow down. He simply tightened his grip and dragged her along. They passed other aliens in the corridors, soldiers and workers and creatures Lily could not identify. Some of them looked at her with curiosity. Others looked at her with something that might have been pity. But none of them tried to help her. None of them even spoke. Finally, they reached a large chamber near the center of the ship. It was some kind of holding cell, with energy barriers instead of walls. Inside the cell were other humans, colonists from New Montana who had been captured earlier. Lily recognized some of them. There was Mrs. Henderson, the librarian, her gray hair disheveled and her face streaked with tears. There was Tony, the farmer's son, only a year older than Lily, his arm hanging at an awkward angle that suggested it was broken. There were others, maybe 30 in all, huddled together in the corner of the cell like frightened animals. Threw Lily into the cell, and she stumbled forward, falling to her knees. The energy barrier hummed back to life behind her, trapping her with the other prisoners. "Rest while you can," the commander said. "We have a long journey ahead, and at the end of it you will wish you had died here." He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing in the metal corridor. Lily watched him go, her hands clenching into fists at her sides. She wanted to scream at him, to curse him, to tell him that humans never gave up, that he would regret what he had done. But the words would not come. All she could do was kneel there on the cold metal floor, her leg bleeding, her body trembling, and her heart filled with a fear unlike anything she had ever known. Mrs. Henderson was the first to reach her. The old librarian knelt down beside Lily and put a gentle arm around her shoulders. "Are you hurt, child?" she asked, her voice soft and kind despite everything. "My leg," Lily said. "Something cut it." Mrs. Henderson examined the wound, her face grave. "It's not too deep, but it needs to be cleaned and bandaged. Tony, do you have anything we can use?" Tony limped over, cradling his broken arm. "I've got a shirt," he said. "It's not clean, but it's better than nothing." Working together, the two of them cleaned Lily's wound as best they could and wrapped it with strips of fabric torn from Tony's shirt. The pain was sharp and hot, but Lily did not cry. She bit her lip and focused on breathing, just like her father had taught her during the survival lessons he gave every weekend. "You did good, kid," Tony said when they were finished. "Most people would be screaming right now." "Screaming doesn't help," Lily said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, flat and distant. "My dad says that fear is just chemicals in your brain. You can choose not to let it control you." Tony and Mrs. Henderson exchanged a look. There was something in their eyes that Lily could not quite read. Respect, maybe, or worry, or both. "Your father is a smart man," Mrs. Henderson said. "Bill Carter, right? The chief engineer." Lily nodded. "He teaches survival classes on the weekends. He says that humans have survived ice ages and plagues and wars. He says we can survive anything if we keep our heads and stick together." "He sounds like a good teacher," Tony said. "The best." Lily's voice cracked slightly and she had to pause to regain her composure. "He'll come for me. He and my mom. They won't stop until they find me." Mrs. Henderson squeezed her shoulder gently. "I'm sure they'll try, dear, but right now we need to focus on keeping you safe. Do you know why the aliens took you? Why did they single you out from the others?" Lily thought about the commander's words, about sacrifice and survival and cycles. She thought about the way he had sniffed the air and smelled her blood. A cold feeling settled in her stomach. "I don't know exactly," she said, "but I think it has something to do with my wound. He said something about pain being valuable, and he said I would serve a greater purpose. She looked up at Mrs. Henderson, her green eyes wide and frightened. What do you think he meant by that? Before the librarian could answer, the ship shuddered, and a low hum filled the air. The prisoners stumbled and grabbed onto each other for support as the vessel began to move. Through the energy barrier, Lily could see the corridor tilting slightly as the ship rose into the air. "We're taking off," Tony said. "They're taking us away from New Montana." Lily pressed her hand against the energy barrier, feeling its warmth against her palm. Somewhere behind that barrier, somewhere back on the planet's surface, her parents were watching the alien ship fly away. They were watching their daughter disappear into the sky, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. "I'll come back," Lily whispered, though no one could hear her. "I promise, Mom, I promise, Dad, I'll come back." The ship accelerated, pushing her back from the barrier. The stars outside the viewport began to streak as they jumped to faster-than-light speed. New Montana disappeared behind them, shrinking to a tiny dot of light and then vanishing entirely. Lily was alone now, truly alone, surrounded by strangers and enemies in the cold darkness of space. But she was not afraid. Or rather, she was afraid, but she did not let it control her. Fear was just chemicals. She could choose not to let it win. She would survive this. She would find a way back home, and she would make Commander regret the day he ever set foot on New Montana. That was a promise. The journey through space lasted 3 days, though it felt like much longer. The prisoners had no way to measure time in their cell, no windows to show them the passing stars, no clocks to mark the hours. They had only the dim red light that never changed, the constant hum of the ship's engines, and the occasional visits from their alien captors. They brought them food twice a day, strange paste-like substances that tasted like nothing Lily had ever eaten before. It was not pleasant, but it was edible, and the prisoners were too hungry to complain. They also brought water, or something like water, in metal containers that had to be shared among all 30 captives. There were arguments about rationing, about who got to drink first, about whether the weakest should get more than the strong. But Danny, despite his injuries, managed to keep the peace. He organized the prisoners into groups, established a fair system for distributing food and water, and made sure that everyone stayed calm. "We have to stick together," he said again and again. "That's the only way we survive this. They want us scared and divided. We have to show them that we're neither." Lily watched the young teacher with growing admiration. He had been beaten badly during the capture, and his body was covered with bruises and cuts. But he never complained, never showed weakness. He just kept working, kept helping, kept reminding everyone that they were humans and that humans did not give up. On the second day, Lily asked him why he was doing so much for everyone else when he was clearly in so much pain. Danny smiled, though the smile did not quite reach his eyes. "Because someone has to," he said, "and because I'm a teacher. It's my job to take care of kids, even when the classroom is an alien prison cell." "Do you think we'll ever get out of here?" Lily asked. Danny was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "But I know that giving up is not an option. As long as we're alive, there's hope. And as long as there's hope, we keep fighting. That's what humans do." Lily thought about his words as she lay on the cold metal floor that night trying to sleep. Hope. It was such a small word, such a fragile concept. But it was all they had right now. Hope that rescue would come. Hope that they would see their families again. Hope that somehow, against all odds, they would survive. On the third day, the ship began to slow down. The prisoners could feel it in their bones, that subtle shift in momentum that meant they were approaching their destination. They gathered near the energy barrier, straining to see what was outside, but the corridor beyond was empty. All they could do was wait. An hour passed, then another. Finally, the ship shuddered to a halt and the energy barrier flickered and died. Commander stood in the corridor, surrounded by a dozen armed soldiers. "The journey is over," he announced. You have arrived at your final destination. Follow me and do not try to run. There is nowhere to go." The prisoners filed out of the cell, Lily among them. Her leg had healed somewhat during the journey, thanks to Mrs. Henderson's care, but it still hurt when she walked. She limped along with the others, her eyes scanning the corridor for any sign of escape. There was none. The ship was a maze of identical passages, all leading toward the same destination. Even if she ran, she would just get lost, and the alien soldiers would catch her before she got far. They walked for what felt like hours, through corridors and chambers and doors that slid open at their approach. Finally, they emerged into a massive airlock, and beyond the airlock was something that made Lily's breath catch in her throat. It was an asteroid, an enormous chunk of rock floating in the void of space, its surface pocked with craters and valleys. But this was no ordinary asteroid. Someone had carved it out, hollowed it, turned it into some kind of massive structure. Tunnels bored into its surface like the holes of a giant anthill. Strange lights glowed in the darkness, red and orange and purple. And hanging above it all, visible through the transparent dome of the airlock, were stars unlike any Lily had ever seen. This was not the system. They were somewhere else entirely, somewhere far from home. "Welcome to KL-7, Commander said, the domain of the dragon." The prisoners murmured among themselves, fear and confusion mixing in equal measure. Lily heard the word repeated again and again, whispered like a curse. "Dragon." "What is the dragon?" she asked, her voice cutting through the murmurs. "What are you going to do to us?" Turned to look at her, his 4 eyes gleaming with amusement. "Curious, are you? Good. Curiosity is a valuable trait. It will make your offering all the more satisfying." "Offering?" Lily's voice hardened. "You're going to sacrifice us to what?" The commander laughed, that horrible grinding sound that made Lily's skin crawl. "The dragon is ancient, child. It has existed since before your species learned to walk upright. It has watched empires rise and fall, seen stars die and be reborn, and it demands tribute, those who fail to provide offerings." He made a gesture with his clawed hand like someone crushing an insect. "Their world ceased to exist." Lily felt the cold fear rising in her chest again, but she pushed it down. "So you kidnap innocent people and feed them to a monster. That's your great civilization. That's your survival strategy." "Watch your tongue, girl." His voice turned dangerous. "You know nothing of survival. You know nothing of the sacrifices we have made to protect our people. The dragon is not a monster. It is a god, and gods demand worship. Gods don't eat children." For a moment, Lily thought the commander would strike her. His hand rose, his claws extended, and his 4 eyes blazed with anger. But then, slowly, he lowered his hand. A strange smile crossed his face, though it was hard to read alien expressions. "You are brave for such a small thing," said. "I wonder if you will still be brave when you stand before the dragon. I wonder if you will still have that fire in your eyes when you look into the abyss." He turned away from her and gestured to his soldiers. "Bring them. It is time for the ceremony." The prisoners were marched out of the airlock and into the tunnels of the asteroid. The air inside was hot and thick, smelling of sulfur and something else, something organic. Lily could feel sweat forming on her brow as she walked, her wounded leg protesting with every step. The tunnels were carved from black stone that seemed to absorb the light. Strange symbols were etched into the walls, glowing faintly with inner fire. Lily did not recognize the language, but she could feel the power behind those symbols, ancient and terrible and vast. They passed chambers filled with alien artifacts, statues of creatures that description, and piles of what might have been bones. Some of the bones were small, like those of children. Lily tried not to look at them. Finally, after what seemed like hours of walking, they emerged into a massive cavern. It was the largest enclosed space Lily had ever seen. The ceiling was so high that it disappeared into darkness above. The walls stretched so far that their ends were lost in shadow. And in the center of the cavern was a pit, a great circular hole easily 100 meters across, its depth shrouded in blackness. The air coming from the pit was hot, almost burning hot, and there was a sound rising from its depths, a low rhythmic noise like breathing. Something enormous was down there, something alive. The dragon. Commander led the prisoners to the edge of the pit and lined them up, facing the darkness below. Lily stood between Tony and Mrs. Henderson, her hands clenched at her sides, her heart pounding in her chest. "Behold," intoned, his voice echoing across the vast cavern, "the dragon of the Eater of Worlds, the ancient one who was old when the stars were young." He stepped forward, raising his arms toward the pit. "Great dragon, we come before you with tribute. We bring you meat from the Terran worlds, flesh and blood and bone. We bring you their fear. We bring you their pain. Accept our offering and spare our people for another cycle." The breathing sound from the pit grew louder. Lily could feel the hot air washing over her in waves, like the breath of some impossibly large creature. She could smell something now, too, a scent like ancient fire and burning stone. Then turned and looked directly at her. "But first," he said, "a special offering, the greatest tribute we can provide." He walked toward her, his claws clicking on the stone floor. Tony tried to step in front of Lily to protect her, but soldiers grabbed him and threw him aside. "A wounded child," announced, grabbing Lily by her hair and dragging her toward the edge of the pit. "Young and innocent, her blood already flows, her pain already sings. She is perfect." Lily struggled against his grip, kicking and scratching, but it was useless. She was lifted into the air, dangling over the pit by her hair, the darkness yawning below her like a hungry mouth. The other soldiers began to laugh and jeer. They threw rocks at Lily as she hung there, striking her arms and legs and back. They shouted insults in their clicking language, words that Lily could not understand but whose meaning was clear. "Look at the Terran squirm," one shouted. "So weak and pathetic," another mocked. "It won't even scream, how boring." Lily could feel tears building in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She would not give these creatures the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She would not break. Not here. Not now. Not ever. Instead, she did something that surprised even herself. She spoke. "You're making a mistake." Her voice was calm and clear, cutting through the jeers and laughter like a knife through paper. The aliens fell silent, staring at her with their many eyes. Tilted his head, his mandibles clicking with confusion. "What did you say, creature?" "I said you're making a mistake." Lily's voice did not waver. "My people don't give up, we don't surrender, and we definitely don't become food." For a moment there was absolute silence in the cavern. Then they erupted in laughter, louder than before. "Your people," spat, "are a young species that has barely crawled out of its own solar system. You are children playing in a galaxy of giants. You are nothing compared to the ancient races, nothing compared to the Dominion, and nothing." He loosened his grip on her hair, letting her slip a few centimeters closer to the void, compared to the dragon. Lily felt her heart stop. This was it. She was going to die. She was 11 years old and she was going to be fed to a monster in the depths of an alien asteroid, far from home, far from her parents, far from everything she had ever known. But even now, even in this final moment, she refused to show fear. She looked down into the darkness below, into the abyss that waited to consume her, and she spoke one last time. "Whatever happens," she said, her voice steady, "I'm not afraid of you." And let go. Lily fell into darkness. The wind roared past her ears as she plummeted, the hot air rushing upward like a river of fire. She could see nothing, hear nothing except the sound of her own heartbeat and the distant laughter of the aliens above. She fell for what seemed like forever, her body tumbling through the void, her mind racing with thoughts of her parents, her home, all the things she would never see again. Then she hit something. It was not the ground. It was not rock or metal or anything solid. It was something warm and soft, like leather that had been left in the sun. Something that moved beneath her, shifting and undulating like the surface of a living creature. Lily lay still, her heart pounding, her breath coming in short gasps. She was alive. Somehow, impossibly, she was alive. But what had she landed on? Where was she? Slowly, carefully, she opened her eyes. At first, she saw nothing. The darkness was complete, absolute, swallowing every trace of light. But then, gradually, she became aware of a faint glow nearby. It was dim and orange like the embers of a dying fire. And it was moving. No, not moving, blinking. It was an eye. An enormous eye, larger than a house, larger than her entire home dome back on New Montana. The eye opened slowly, revealing a pupil that seemed to contain entire galaxies, swirling and burning with inner fire. And as it opened, a voice filled Lily's mind. It was not a sound, not words in the traditional sense. It was more like a feeling, a presence, something ancient and vast and unimaginably powerful reaching out to touch her thoughts. You do not scream. Lily wanted to scream. Every instinct in her body was telling her to scream, to run, to do anything except lie here on the surface of this impossible creature. But her voice would not come. Her body would not move. She could only lie there, staring into that enormous eye as the presence in her mind examined her. Interesting, the voice said. The others always scream. They beg and plead and cry for mercy, but you are different. Lily swallowed hard and forced herself to speak. I'm terrified. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm so scared I can barely breathe. Yes, I can feel your fear. It burns inside you like a small star. The eye moved closer, studying her with alien curiosity. But you do not let it rule you. You fell into my domain, wounded and alone, and still you think of survival. Still you think of fighting. This is unusual. What are you? Lily managed to ask. The presence in her mind seemed to consider the question. I have been called many names by many species. The dragon, the eater of worlds, the ancient one. But names are just labels that small minds use to understand things they cannot comprehend. I simply am. I have existed since the universe was young. I will exist until the last star dies and the cosmos falls into eternal darkness. Are you going to eat me? A sound emerged from the darkness around her, something like a laugh but deeper, older, resonating through her bones. That is what they believe. They think I demand tribute, that I consume the offerings they bring me. In truth, the eye blinked slowly. I have no need for their sacrifices. I feed on the energy of stars, on the radiation that permeates the cosmos. Your small bodies hold no nutritional value for me. Lily's fear began to shift, mixing with confusion. Then, why do you let them throw people to you? Why do you let them think you need tributes? Because it amuses me. The dragon's voice held a note of ancient weariness. When you have lived for 4 billion years, child, you learn that entertainment is precious. They created this tradition themselves, born from their own fear of what they did not understand. I simply never corrected them. It was interesting to watch them grovel. Interesting? Lily's voice hardened despite her fear. People are dying, innocent people, children, and you think it's interesting. The eye narrowed slightly. You are bold for such a small creature, bold and defiant. These are qualities I have not seen in many. The presence in her mind shifted, seeming to examine her more closely. Tell me, young Terran, what makes your species so stubborn, so unwilling to accept the natural order of things? Lily thought about the question. She thought about her father, teaching survival lessons on weekends. She thought about her mother, never giving up hope even in the worst situations. She thought about Danny, keeping the prisoners calm and organized even when everything seemed lost. She thought about the history she had learned in school, the ice ages and plagues and wars that humanity had survived. We're not stubborn, she finally said. We're just used to fighting. We've had to fight for everything we have. Our planet tried to kill us with ice ages. Diseases tried to wipe us out. We even tried to kill each other more times than I can count. But we always survived, we always found a way. She looked directly into that enormous eye, her green eyes meeting its burning gaze. That's what humans do, we survive, no matter what. The dragon was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was softer, more thoughtful. I remember now. A century ago, by your reckoning, a Terran ship crashed on this asteroid. The crew was stranded for 3 of your months before rescue came. They could have surrendered to despair. They could have fed themselves to me, ended their suffering quickly. Instead, they rationed their supplies, built shelters from wreckage, and sang songs in the darkness to keep their spirits high. Lily listened, her heart beating fast. They were not warriors, the dragon continued. They were scientists and engineers, people of peace and curiosity, yet they refused to surrender. They refused to give up hope, even when hope seemed foolish. I found myself impressed. I let them live. I even helped them in small ways they never knew. You helped them. I guided rescue ships toward this asteroid. I kept the worst of the cosmic radiation away from their camp. I watched them, these strange, soft creatures who refused to die. The eye blinked again. I have watched many species come and go over the eons. Some were mighty, with empires that spanned galaxies. Some were ancient, with wisdom that would take your breath away. But none of them had what your species has, that stubborn, irrational, beautiful refusal to accept defeat. Lily felt something strange happening in her chest. The fear was still there, but it was being joined by something else. Hope, wonder, the beginning of understanding. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you are interesting, young Terran. Because you fell into my domain expecting death, and instead of screaming, you asked questions. Because you looked into my eye and told me I was making a mistake." The dragon's laugh rumbled through the darkness again. "No one has spoken to me like that in 3 billion years. No one has had the courage." Slowly, gently, the surface beneath Lily began to rise. She realized that she was sitting on the dragon's head, on a vast expanse of scaled hide that was slowly lifting her back toward the light above. The pit's edge came into view, with its crowds of aliens and human prisoners still gathered around it. "The age of tribute is over," the dragon said, its voice no longer just in Lily's mind but booming through the cavern, shaking the very stone. "They have abused my patience for too long. They have used my name to terrorize the weak, to enslave the innocent, to commit crimes against beings who deserve better." The soldiers began to panic, scrambling backward as the dragon's head rose from the pit. Commander stood frozen in shock, his 4 eyes wide with terror. "This child," the dragon continued, "has shown more courage than your entire species has shown in 1,000 years. She has reminded me why I spared her kind once before. She has earned my protection." Lily stood up carefully, balancing on the dragon's massive head. She could see everything now, the whole cavern spread out below her, the terrified aliens and the hopeful faces of the human prisoners. Danny was staring at her with his mouth hanging open. Mrs. Henderson was crying, but they looked like tears of joy. Commander finally found his voice. "Great Dragon, we meant no offense. We only sought to honor you with tribute. We did not know." "You knew enough." The dragon's voice turned cold. "You knew enough to mock this child as she fell. You knew enough to throw rocks at a wounded girl. You called her weak, pathetic. You laughed at her fear." The massive head turned toward, bringing one burning eye to bear on the trembling commander. "Let me show you what weakness truly looks like." What happened next was too fast for Lily to follow. There was a blur of movement, a flash of fire, and then Commander simply was not there anymore. Neither were the soldiers who had participated in the taunting. The ones who had simply stood and watched were left alive, frozen in terror. "The humans are under my protection now," the dragon announced to the surviving. "You will return them to their home. You will never attack their worlds again. And you will spread the word to every corner of this galaxy. The dragon has chosen a side. Any who move against the Terrans will face my wrath." The soldiers fled, tripping over each other in their haste to escape. Within minutes, The cavern was empty except for the human prisoners and the vast form of the dragon. Lily looked down at her people, at the faces staring up at her with a mixture of awe and disbelief. She thought about her parents, waiting for her back on New Montana. She thought about the promise she had made to herself, the promise to survive and come back home. "Will you really protect us?" she asked the dragon. "All of us, all of humanity." "I will watch over your species," the dragon replied. "I will shield you from the worst of what this galaxy has to offer, not because you are weak, but because you have earned my respect. You alone, among all the races I have encountered, refuse to bow to fear. You alone continue to fight when all hope seems lost." "What happens now?" The dragon lowered its head, bringing Lily gently back to the ground where her fellow humans waited. Now you go home. Your ship will take you back to New Montana. Your parents are waiting for you." Lily felt tears finally forming in her eyes, but this time she did not try to stop them. "Thank you," she whispered. "Do not thank me, child. You saved yourself. You saved all of them." The dragon's voice grew softer, almost gentle. "But I wonder, will you be content to return to your farming colony, to live a simple life after all you have seen?" Lily thought about the question. She thought about the stars, countless and mysterious. She thought about the galaxy, vast and full of wonders she could not imagine. She thought about all the adventures waiting out there, all the discoveries, all the possibilities. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think I want to see more, I want to explore, I want to understand." The dragon's laugh rumbled through the cavern one last time. "Then perhaps, young Lily Carter, this is not the end of your story. Perhaps it is only the beginning." And as Lily walked toward her fellow humans, as Danny embraced her and Mrs. Henderson cried with joy, as they all made their way back to the ship that would carry them home, she knew the dragon was right. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. The message reached Earth 3 weeks later. It came from a small farming colony called New Montana, from a man named Bill Carter who was holding his daughter for the first time in almost a month. The message was brief, just 2 words, but it spread across the planet like wildfire. "She's home." And across the galaxy, in the depths of an ancient asteroid, something old and vast smiled in the darkness. They had thrown a wounded child into the pit to die. They had not realized they were giving humanity its greatest ally. They had not realized that the dragon had been waiting for 4 billion years for something interesting to happen. They had not realized that in all the cosmos, only humanity had the audacity to fall into the mouth of a god and ask questions instead of screaming. The age of tribute was over. The age of humanity had begun. And somewhere in the void between stars, an 11-year-old girl named Lily Carter was dreaming of the day when she would return to the darkness, when she would ride upon the dragon's head once more, when she would show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. The universe had no idea what was coming, but it was about to find out.